The most dangerous thing a girl can say to a wounded woman is that you are always worthy too.
Don't tell me you still fancy yourself a princess. Good God, child, look around you. Or better yet, look in the mirror.
I am a princess. All girls are. Even if they live in tiny old attics, even if they dress in rags, even if they aren't pretty or smart or young, they're still princesses. All of us. Didn't your father ever tell you that? Didn't he?
If I find you up here with any of the girls again, I will throw you out into the street!
So what happens when a girl who was protected in her softness meets a woman who had to survive without it? And what happens when a girl who was raised to believe she was a princess comes face to face with a woman who was never crowned? In today's video, I am going to discuss the uncrowned woman syndrome and 4 ways to detect her. Let's get into it. Hi, my name is Tammy, and welcome back to my channel where feminine energy, nostalgia, and psychology meet. Today, I want to talk about a moment, not as a children's scene, but as a quiet psychological truth about womanhood, about what happens when some women are taught that they must earn their value, and others are taught they are born with it. When society denies girls their inherent worth, it creates a syndrome I call the uncrowned woman. Let's just jump right into it. Now, what is the uncrowned woman syndrome? Well, I define it as a woman who was never affirmed in her girlhood, who resents other women who were crowned without suffering. And you often see this syndrome occur in older women against younger women. And that's where the resentment comes in at. The younger, softer woman usually triggers the older woman who believes she had to work to earn soft femininity. The movie, based off the book A Little Princess, shows a prime example of this in the scene where Sarah, who was a very wealthy and privileged young girl who is still dealing with grief and losing her wealth, is confronted by Miss Minchin, the headmistress of an all-girls boarding school in London. Now, if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, spoiler alert, Miss Minchin delivered the heartbreaking news to Sarah that she had lost her father, now making her an orphan, and she tells her she must work to earn her keep. Now, keep in mind the phrase, work to earn your keep, and we'll come back to that. So she strips Sarah of her fancy room. Miss Minchin takes all of her belongings and throws her into the dusty, cold attic to be shared with her maid servant, Becky, who is also an orphan and poorly treated by Miss Minchin. Now, in this particular scene, Miss Minchin barges in to find Sarah entertaining some of the other girls in her room. Entertaining and playing around, which is forbidden because Sarah is now an orphan. She has lost all of her privileges. And that does include talking to the other girls. But that isn't what really bothers her. What bothers her is that Sarah, even after everything that she has lost, she still isn't broken. She's still soft, and she still acts and carries herself like a princess. She hasn't lost her kindness. She hasn't lost her aura. And this infuriates Miss Minchin so much so that she starts yelling and ranting and raving about how Sarah lives in this fantasy world and how the world is so cruel and how Sarah needs to do away with these princess antics. Miss Minchin is trying to break Sarah's spirit. And then that's where we get the most profound scene in this movie, when Sarah checks her and she tells Miss Minchin that she is still a princess and that all girls are. And didn't your father tell you you were a princess? And then we see a triggered Miss Minchin fighting tears run out of the room. Now let's break down the 4 reasons why those words triggered her. Number 1, it exposes her identity.
It's a cruel, nasty world out there, and it's our duty to make the best of it. Not to indulge in ridiculous dreams, but to be productive and useful. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
But I don't believe in it.
In this movie, in the initial scene where Miss Minchin relays to Sarah that she has lost her father and her wealth, her goal was not just to tell Sarah that she was now poor and that she's an orphan, that she must figure something out. Her goal was to tell her, you are alone. You are ordinary. You are nothing special. You now have to earn your living just like us. When you are dealing with extreme feminine archetypes, especially with an archetype like this, you have to be very careful how you perceive and hear the words that they are saying to you. You can't just take their words for face value. You have to also hear the subtext. Because with these type of women, their words are surface and nothing compared to how they really feel. Her goal is not to relay information to Sarah and to console her and to support her. Her goal was to not only break her, but to also break that princess bubble that surrounded her. Remember when I told you to keep in mind the words earn your keep? So when Sarah first came to the school, it was a big deal because her father was very prominent and very wealthy. By Sarah being there, he was going to contribute a lot of money to the school. Now, this is a private boarding school in London for girls, and the other girls attending were very wealthy too and came from very wealthy and prominent families, but they were still nowhere near as wealthy as Sarah. And you can see throughout the movie that Miss Minchin was always bothered by Sarah. She would always look at her sideways, make little snide remarks. You could just see her disdain for Sarah. The energy was just off. But earlier on in the movie, you don't really know why. You just can tell that there was some type of tension. So when she strips all of Sarah's wealth from her, you can tell she was waiting for that moment, as if she was waiting for her downfall to show her. You don't get a special princess pass. I had to grow up hard, so you do too. And also in the back of Miss Mitch's mind, and saying, hey, see, I told you it was all a fairy tale. I told you this wasn't real. Women don't get to be this soft and protected. Soft femininity has to be earned, or something has to be sacrificed.
What are you staring at? Don't you understand what I'm saying? You are alone in the world. Unless I decide to keep you here. Out of charity.
Like I said, you can definitely tell she wants to break Sarah, but she ultimately wants to break that princess shield that Sarah carries to reinforce or to justify why she, as a little girl, was never treated as such. The way she talks about the world being hard and how Sarah needs to come back to the harsh reality that life is never that good for anyone reveals her identity, reveals her state of consciousness. Sometimes, if you just be quiet and listen and allow a person to speak without interruption, a person will reveal to you about how they actually feel and who they actually are. And you have to be very careful because Miss Minchin is a very dangerous character. And let me tell you why. She's dangerous because when you see her in the movie, she presents as this older woman who's just kind of hard and who's kind of rigid, who probably didn't have a soft life growing up, but who's wise and older and who's trying to school young children about how life can be harsh and how you have to always take care of yourself and how you can never depend on anyone else. On one side of the coin, it sounds like a woman is pouring wisdom to you and kind of giving you tough love. But if you keep listening and keep watching, she reveals herself. And she shows that this is way deeper than tough love or me trying to help you understand the harsh realities of the world. This is about a woman who is projecting her fears and insecurities onto someone else. The way she speaks reveals who she has been all along and what she really feels about soft women. which contradicts herself in a sense because at this boarding school, she takes in very privileged girls, but she also resents them at the same time. So this definitely reveals her identity, but it also reveals Sarah's identity as well. Or should I say it reinforces Sarah's identity? Because even though Miss Minchin thought she had broken her and humbled her, Sarah says, cool, you can feel that way, but I don't believe in it. Sarah politely says, I am a princess. All girls are. And this was Sarah's stance before she lost her father and after she lost her father, which reveals Sarah is still Sarah. And which also reveals a true identity instead of a fake identity that Miss Minchin is carrying. And another thing I want to point out about Sarah is that when Sarah first meets Becky, Miss Minchin's maidservant, even though she is a servant and an orphan, she's very polite to her. She's very nice. She's very kind. She says, thank you. You're welcome. Versus the other privileged girls in this boarding school, they will not talk to her. They make fun of her. They snicker and they laugh and they look down upon her. But Sarah was a complete opposite, showing and being true to her identity all along. So when we get to the scene where Sarah finds out she loses her father, she loses her wealth, and we see as an audience that this girl is still saying, hey, I'm still a princess, is inspirational for us. But when she says this to Miss Minchin, it devastates her. Because Sarah isn't saying, I used to be special. She's also telling Miss Minchin that you never needed permission to be. And in this moment, you see Miss Minchin finally realizing this truth too. And that is why she runs out of the room. Miss Minchin didn't leave the room because she was angry. She left because what it took her 40-something years to learn, Sarah already knows this as a child. She left because for the first time, she had realized that something had been stolen from her and that it was too late to get it back. Number 2, deferred feminine worth. When a woman is taught that her value comes later, through marriage, through sacrifice, through motherhood or status, or has to be earned in some way instead of given to her at birth, something reconstructs in them mentally. Instead of them knowing and believing that their soft feminine power is in them innately, they wait for something or someone to validate it for them. It's kind of like they don't feel special until someone bestows upon them or rewards them with it. They feel like their worth is being postponed or withheld until they show proof that they are worthy or that someone has to give this to them. Unlike someone like Sarah, who believes you are special simply because you exist. And that's a hard thing to hear from someone who's on the other side of that scale. When you have two women on polar opposite sides, opposite upbringings, opposite age, therefore opposite ideologies, it's like oil and water. It's almost impossible for them to coincide without one feeling as if the other one is out of touch or too extreme or one of them holding some type of resentment. They essentially repel each other. And here's why this story becomes unsettling. Because Miss Minchin isn't just cruel, she's cruel and certain about it. She's certain that worth is conditional. She's certain that femininity must be earned. Her unwillingness to see the other side should inform you a lot about her upbringing. And someone could argue the same for Sarah in her point of view. But the difference is Sarah isn't cruel and Sarah is not being resentful. And this reinforces the lie that Miss Minchin was told about womanhood, that worth must be granted, not inherent, and that you are only special if someone chooses you, that you are only valuable if you're useful, and that you are only protected if you have status. Miss Minchin represents a woman who learned femininity as a survival tactic, not birthright. And that's why Sarah's certainty is so threatening to Miss Minchin, because it exposes that lie. Now, the movie hints that Miss Minchin was raised with an abusive family and that she did not have a loving relationship with her father. So you have a woman who's had to work hard for everything, never loved properly by her family. She didn't have that shield of protection from her father and that cloak of love that says, you're beautiful, you're special no matter what. And now she has this young child in her face telling her that none of this was ever true. I'm a princess. We all are princesses, that we all should believe in fairy tales, and that you too could have had this wonderful, beautiful life. And so she snaps. And although I don't condone Miss Minchin's cruelty, I can understand why she snaps. So it's not surprising how Miss Minchin reacts to this situation. There's even a scene in the movie during story time where Sarah was reading a book to the other girls before bedtime. Miss Minchin almost lost it then because once again, she doesn't come from that fairy tale world. She doesn't come from little girls are princesses and they get rescued and they get to be protected and saved. So if the mere notion of Sarah reading a fairy tale triggers her, Miss Minchin does not know that world. And for a young girl to not only show her that that world is indeed real, but to also prove it physically and energetically makes her realize this devastation even more. Miss Minchin doesn't believe in princesses because no one ever told her she was one. Number 3, she realizes that confidence is inherited, not earned. A hidden flaw in all of this, which also added another insult to injury to Miss Minchin, was realizing that Sarah's power came from self-recognition, not privilege. As wealthy and abundant as this girl was, her princess attitude didn't even come from her being privileged and wealthy. It came from herself affirming herself and herself affirming the beautiful affirmations that her father taught her. And once again, this is proven when Sarah loses everything but still remains the same. Still nice, still humble, still kind, and still affirming that she is a princess. The loss of her father removes her wealth, but not her identity. Miss Minchin took on the facade of, I don't like this little privileged girl, but I won't dare say it because she has money, status, and wealth. But the ultimate facade that she took on was pretending that she was happy with the way the world had served her, when in actuality, she never liked the hand that she was dealt. But she forced herself to believe it and adopt it into an identity, knowing all along that deeply somewhere inside of her, she wanted more too. But she didn't have the courage to believe it. She didn't have the courage to believe that there was more to it or more for her. Sarah lost everything abruptly. And that's very hard too. It's hard to be someone who grew up rough, not having things, having to work hard, having to sacrifice, not being loved, not being appreciated, not being affirmed properly. And it's also hard to be someone who grew up wealthy and abundant, who grew up being told that she was loved and that she was a princess and losing it all in 1 second. So when Sarah lost everything, of course, she could have acted out, she could have had a tantrum and so forth, and we would have understood. But she didn't. And in a way, I believe that Miss Minchin wanted that reaction out of Sarah. Miss Minchin wanted a certain reaction out of Sarah, period. So she could say, see, you're just as bad as me. You're not really a princess. Look how you conducted yourself. But instead of Sarah saying, I deserve more than you, she's saying to Miss Minchin that you deserve this too. Miss Minchin could take everything away from Sarah except the way she saw Sarah and the way Sarah saw herself. Sarah's confidence isn't loud or defiant, and that is why Sarah is so unbearable to Miss Minchin. And number 4, the princess wound, when older women target youth. This isn't about Miss Minchin's age. This is about the resentment that she carries at her age. Miss Minchin isn't jealous of Sarah's money and wealth alone. She's jealous of Sarah being cherished, that she was spoken to correctly and softly as a child. She's jealous because Sarah did not have to partake in suffering to be affirmed. Now, this can also happen when an older woman feels this way about a younger woman who did not grow up having a soft life, who was not affirmed, but she still gives that presentation. She still gives that image. She still affirms herself. And I call this the princess wound because it shows the grief of women who were never allowed to be soft, who resent those who carry it naturally, or have gotten to a place where they had to affirm it for themselves. There are some women that just never get there, or it takes them a very long time. And by that point, they are very resentful. So they carry this wound that if it's not treated properly, if it's not healed properly, if it doesn't have the right bandage, they still bleed on everybody, especially women that are younger than them, because in their mind, they still have time. And how did they get this mindset at a young age? And I am 20, 30 years older than them, and I'm still seeking that. I still don't have that. And that can be devastating. And the truth is, these women were always princesses as well, but they just didn't know it. No one told them, no one showed them. And they didn't get to a point where they found out for themselves. You know how you hear some women say, I was never told I was loved. I was never told I was pretty. This is also a part of that wound, the princess wound. And like I said, if it's not taken care of properly, you may become a mismention. And this goes back to the statement that I said in the very beginning of this video. When society denies girls their inherent worth, it creates women who punish other women for having it. In a sense, Miss Minchin isn't jealous. She's grieving. She's grieving the little girl that was lost and wanted to be loved correctly. She's grieving the little girl who didn't get to wake up in a mansion and loved correctly by her father. And even if she didn't grow up in a mansion, she's grieving the fact that no one told her to make believe that she grew up in a mansion and to make believe that she was a princess and that she was magical and that she could be anything that she wanted to be. She's grieving not having a father that told her, I love you every day. She's grieving the young woman that she was never allowed to be. The young woman who allowed herself to be worthy, seen, and chosen. She's grieving the woman she could have been if she would have been. But most of all, she's grieving that even when someone else didn't give her validation, that she couldn't find it for herself. So why does this scene still matter to women to this day? Well, because Miss Minchin is still out there, just in a different form, just wearing different clothing, different outfits, different disguises. And here's where the story stops being about a boarding school or a little girl. Because the uncrowned woman, the princess wound, did not disappear with time. And I know that to be true because I have met this woman and I have seen this woman and I have felt the wrath of this woman. So when I was in high school, I had a part-time job at a restaurant. I was a hostess. And for whatever reason, my manager, who was a woman, she just seemed to have a problem with me. And for the life of me, I could not put my finger on it. She was always very rude and snarky to me. She would always make little side comments. She would give me these little weird looks. And she would do like little weird things. Like, for example, when it was time for me to take my lunch break, for some reason, she would always cut it short or accuse me of taking a longer break than what I was supposed to have taken. But I never did that. And I was the kind of worker who was very calm, cool, collect, very professional, always there on time. But like I said, she would do little weird things, but she wouldn't do them to anyone else. And she was always very nice to other people. It looked or appeared that she was only like this with me. Mind you, I was the youngest working at this restaurant and the only student during this time. And like I said, she would do little weird things. When it was time for us to get our tip share at the end of the night, if you've ever worked a job as a waitress or a hostess, you would get tips. You would get tips every night. And they would call it tip share. So at the end of the night, when it was time for us to get tip share or time for us to get paid and get our check, we would go to her office at the end of the night. And for some reason, even if I got there first, she would always give me my check or my tip share last. And there was no rhyme or reason. Even if I was the only one back there, she would stall or fidget. She would just find a way to make sure that I got it late. Mind you, I'm a high school student. Mind you, during this time, it's about 11:30, 11:45. I need to go home to go study. I need to go home to go prepare for school. But she was always like this to me. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why. So I kept replaying moments in my head and I kept thinking about it. And I carried this with me for a very long time. Not the pain of it, because it was very hurtful to me during the time, but thankfully I didn't carry the weight of the pain. I was just curious to why this woman treated me this way. I kept racking my brain saying, what did I do to this lady? Is there something that I was doing that I didn't notice? Am I not aware of myself? I didn't get it. until I thought about one of my favorite children's books, a book that had also become a movie, and there is this one particular scene that stayed on my mind that resonated with me, which is the scene, of course, when Sarah tells Miss Minchin, "I am a princess, all girls are." It was not only the scene that made me think of this, but the dynamic and the relationship between Sarah and Miss Minchin. It reminded me a lot of my dynamic and my relationship with that female manager when I was in high school working at that restaurant. The way Miss Minchin looked, viewed, and treated Sarah was almost identical to how she treated me and how I can bet you she perceived me. So that's how I came up with this video. And I said to myself, what can I name this woman? And that is where it came to me, the uncrowned syndrome. And this is not the only time I have seen this dynamic. I've seen it in many other instances. So I know this type of woman is still out here and she's still carrying this princess wound. So I wanted to make this video so that if you ever come across this dynamic, now this could be between a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old, a 40-year-old and a 60-year-old, a 50-year-old and a 70-year-old. It can exist in different age groups, in different age brackets. But I wanted to make this video so that if you ever come across this woman, because I haven't seen this particular archetype or this particular type of a woman explained in this way, between the older woman versus the younger woman, and how the older woman may resent and poorly treat the younger woman. I wanted you to be aware, and I wanted you to be able to detect it earlier on so that you can know how to move. So in today's world, Miss Minchin is not a headmistress at a female boarding school, but she might be a boss that undermines younger women. She might be a woman who mocks softness as weakness. A woman who feels like you need to just wait your turn because you don't belong. You may find her in your family. You may find her in the corporate world. You may run into her on the street or at a restaurant. She comes in many different forms, but do not fall for the disguise. These women will not openly reveal themselves. This is feminine envy, jealousy of what another woman has inherited or what you think another woman has inherited. Miss Minchin was cruel, mean, and she showed conditional kindness. And she wasn't just cruel to Sarah, she was cruel to her sister. She was cruel to her servant Becky. She was pretty much like this with everybody. So her resentment was running rampant, because she represents a group of women who believes that girlhood magic expires, or that you need to suffer or have a hard life before you taste any ounce of soft femininity. These women think that their worth expires at some point. These women think it's okay to snatch another woman's light because theirs has been dimmed. These women believe that femininity must be disciplined, not protected, and not preserved. In this story, you see Sarah, a young girl, break a spell. She broke a generational curse right in front of this woman's face. And even more uncomfortably, we saw the silent, underlining question of, who told you you weren't a princess? And what did that belief cost you? Because the real tragedy is not that Sarah lost her crown, but that Miss Minchin never knew she had one. So if you are the uncrowned woman, may this video reach you, and may you now have permission to go and pick up your crown. Because not only is it there, it has always been there. And if you are not this woman, have you ever dealt with this archetype or know someone that has? And honestly, I just want to know your feelings and thoughts about this, because this archetype can be very tricky. So drop your comments below and let me know what you think. And if you like this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe. And thank you all so much for showing up and watching my videos. Your presence has definitely been felt and appreciated. But until next time, I will see you all in the next one. And remember that every woman is iconic. Bye now.